Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today we're going to work on a customer's Mitchell 302 salt water. I've done one of these in the past, but we'll do one again. This one's in pretty good condition. Seems to be operating properly with the correct spool oscillation. It's got the right click. It's got some dirt on it. We'll go clean that up. We'll get underneath it. We'll show you how these things come together. We'll also work on oiling it and cleaning it up and making sure that the drags are intact. So with this one, I like to start by taking the handle off. The handle is simply a through nut that goes into the main gear, and just bring that up opposite on the turning, and you'll bring that one out. This one's got some grease and grime on it, so let's start our cleaning right there. So I use, in this case, for fish scaling and grease and general crud, I use a purple power and just a few squirts of that. And a little scoff pad, I use one of these kitchen scrubbies. Most of the time that will get the junk off of the reel. And in this case it's doing just that. It's cleaning that up. And cosmetics goes a long way in terms of servicing a reel. If you get a dirty exterior, you don't clean it up, sometimes that dirt just translates into future problems. So why not take the time while you're doing a reel and just make sure that it stays clean all the way around. So this one, just a little scuffy pad, and again, that doesn't mar the surface too much, and it has just enough abrasive power to clean it up. And one more squirt of this should get that last piece off there. And we're going to find that this reel probably has been sitting around a little while, and last time it was fished probably wasn't hosed off or cleaned with fresh water, and that's a good practice to get into. Once you're done with your fishing for the day, take it home, squirt it down, run it under a kitchen faucet, fresh water for sure, and that will get rid of a lot of the contaminants or things that tend to build up, dry up, and then just make a reel look pretty ugly. Alright, so I'm going to take that, and I'm going to take the washer that goes with the handle. I'm going to put that into a parts bucket. Now, I recommend the parts bucket almost all the time here. Parts buckets just keep everything into the right place. You know where to get them when you finish. To take the spool off, you're going to take the retainer nut out, pull the drag knob off. And again, we got a lot of grease and grime and dirt and grit and things like that under here, so we'll make sure that we clean this up in the process as well. You want to make sure as you're doing this that you know what the sequence is for the parts that you're removing. In this case, we have the drag knob, a spring, and then the first of the drags. And this is a metallic drag system. So the next one up would be the set screw, set washer with the little indentation in the collar. Here's the metal piece that does all the work. It's a little offset spring clip. And we got the click that goes with that, followed by a couple of more washers, a couple of eared washers. And the reason why I'm taking these out, and metal, a lot of people say, why do you bother taking these out? They're all metal anyway. It's because we got a lot of grime and stuff and the like in here. And again, I want to do a thorough cleaning on this. I want to make sure that it works optimally. So again, I'm going to go back to this purple power. Sometimes if you want to use a WD-40 or lubricating oil or some other degreaser, go right ahead and do that. That's your prerogative for sure. I'm just going to make sure that this is nice and clean and that we get the best we can from the performance results of this reel. So you can clean that up. If you have some hard to reach places, go ahead and use something like a cotton swab to get in there and make sure that the grease and grime is in here. And this is almost a universal with these top drag reels. These are the ones that take the brunt of the storm, so to speak. Everything comes together up top here, the water flows in, and that's how you get the issues that you do. Okay, so if you notice that there's a little bit of built-up corrosion on these, you want to go ahead and grab a piece of steel wool, and that generally will get rid of the grime or the wear and tear of these. Sometimes it's just simply tarnish. Sometimes it's the more ugly green corrosion. In this case, just seems to be some tarnish. So make it smooth, because that's the best way that they can operate. Once you do that, you reinstall in the sequence that it was taken out, which was the eared washers, followed by the circular washer, followed by the little click washer that has the hold for this This clip spring, the one that does the work, that has ears on it as well. Then the collar, which presses down that spring. And at this point we can kind of set that aside. There's another washer that goes on top in this, but that can't be reinstalled till we go back and we work on that shaft. So I'm just going to put them in a parts bucket and just the way it is there at the moment. And then we can pull the washer assembly off, the spool shaft assembly off next. We want to do that by taking out the side plate. Those have 4 screws. This one has a lot of dirt underneath it. I noticed as I was cranking that there was a chirp in the spool, and that chirp seems to be driven by all of the sand and grit and grime inside the rotor, so we're going to go ahead and take care of that. I'm pulling these 4 screws out first. I'm not just throwing them into the parts bucket because I want to make sure that all of these screws are the same length. Sometimes manufacturers use different screws in those side plates. You just want to make certain that it's the right screws in the right holes when you go to reassemble. Right now it looks like all 4 of them are the same, so we won't have any issues there. This will take the drive side out, which will expose the gear, and it'll also expose the shaft, which we can pull out next. Alright, these 4 are identical, so they can go back into the parts bucket. Good time to tell you, if you don't work on these reels on a regular basis, go ahead and take pictures along the way. That way you'll understand exactly where the pieces and parts go when you go to reassemble. This reel is relatively clean inside. It kind of felt that way. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to go remove this reel. To do that, we're going to have to get to the other side here to take the spool assembly out. There's a little carrier that runs on the other side, and this is kind of a unique reel in that it has 2 sides to it from the side plate standpoint. So again, we're going to make sure that these screws are the same size on both. There's a little tensioner spring that always rides behind this and seems to get left out of a lot of reels that are serviced. Just make sure that you have that on reassembly. I'm working on the last 2 screws here. A little bit of trouble with that one. There we go. It always is helpful to have a couple of different size and width bladed screwdrivers readily at hand here in case you run into that problem, and the general purpose one may or may not fit. A lot of people have asked me, what is this screwdriver I use? It's an electrician's screwdriver. It has a rubber shield on it so that as they work on their electric wires, if they touch a live wire to metal, it doesn't spark. To me, I like this because you can grab it and twirl the screwdriver blade a little bit. Okay, so we're out here. This has got some accumulated grease on the carrier assembly. Let's go ahead and take that out. So this reel doesn't look terrible underneath. It's generally in good condition, with the exception of being a little tight and tired. And then we'll come up top here. We'll pull that. These are the 4 screws that go here. Those screws off to the side for a moment. Come up top here. This should be a reverse threaded nut here. I'm going to grab pliers here, see if I can't just grab it with, let's see if we can grab it with a wrench. An 8mm wrench should work if I happen to have one. Try a 9. There we go. We got that off here. Okay, so we've taken the collar off. That hides the nut. The nut should be a 1/2 inch nut, I'm thinking. 14mm works on that as well. Pull that off. Again, if everything goes in the parts bucket and if you're taking pictures along the way, you've got an easy path here. Okay, so this is going to come up. There's your ball bearing. That's I'm sorry, it's the pinion gear. There is no ball bearings in this one. Okay, it does have a slot in here that if you wanted to pull that gear out, you could. This one doesn't need to have any dramatic work done here other than lubrication. This does. This is why the spool is scraping. It's just got a lot of sand in here, or dirt, or whatever it is. Again, back to my Purple Power. We're going to hit this one up pretty good. I don't like sand in general because it tends to get all over the workbench, but sometimes it's better on the workbench than it is inside the reel. So we're going to go ahead and get that out of here. And just make sure you get rid of whatever it is that you're using to wipe down these reels when you have sand in there, because if you don't, it's just going to clog the next project you're working on, and that's obviously not a good thing. So this will take care of the squeak that was going on in there. I'm going to hit it again. So this is designed as a degreaser. It's kind of multi-purpose. You can use it as the degreasing function. You can use it general cleanup. I like the fact that it takes fish scales and the like off of there. There's certainly other products that are out on the marketplace that do similar. I've just found that for whatever reason this one works very well, so you stick with what works. The old "if it ain't broke, don't fix it" kind of motif. Okay, we're in good condition there. Just a little bit more of that sand that seems to be bugging this under this spool release lever. Let's get that kind of taken care of there. Okay, so this case is cleaned up again. I'm going to hit that now with some WD-40, the general lubricant. Wipe it down one more time, just to see if we can't trap that way, and then we're good to go. Drop of oil onto the spool release, bail release mechanism, and going to go reinstall. So let's just clean this part up then. This is the business end of the reel. It's got a little bit of grease and grime and junk in here, older stuff. We'll go ahead and get rid of that. So what happens when you leave the old grease in there is sometimes it traps sand, and especially looking at a reel like this that had that sand up there in the core of the reel. You want to make sure that you get all of that out. That's the clip that goes on the side shield. And just make sure that it operates effectively. So we're in good condition inside here internally. We're just going to go ahead and put some blue grease back on this one. Put it in the channel that's going to have the main gear run on this. Back on the other side, we'll just grab another Q-tip because there's a little bit of accumulated grease on this side as well. Get that out of there. And a little bit of blue grease onto the shaft, onto the pinion gear. Turning it, checking the pinion gear as we're going along to make sure that it's in good condition, which it is. And then I'm going to go spray this down here. It's another place where the dust and grime seems to have accumulated over time. Kind of makes sense. It's the reel butt, so I can see where that work itself in there. So while we have the reel open, there's no sense not cleaning up and taking care of what we can. Then a little bit of oil up top here. Okay, so we're going to reinstall the oh, we got a little bit more dirt here too, so let's get that out of the way while we're at it. I didn't expect to be doing the dishes today, but follow along with me. It's a good practice to make sure all of this stuff is clean. Okay, so we're pretty cleaned up on that. Very good. And now there's a little slot here in the spool that needs to ride onto the slot of the pinion gear. That's the hold fast. Then we can go ahead and put the nut back on. Tighten that nut down. Put the carrier back on for the spool. Tighten that back down. And then come on over to the main drive just to make sure that we've got that all clean. Checking the teeth all around this one, it's fine. I'm going to bring this out now. Got a little bit of old grease that is settled in there, so we're going to go ahead and wipe that down. Making sure that I feel a little bit of sand in here too, so let's make sure that that's nice and clean. Using that paper towel for that. Checking the side plate, you want to make sure that this anti-reverse dog gets lubed. It's got a little bit of rust on it. Let's give it a nice generous bath of the oil there. Pick up that one little piece of coagulated grease there. Check for operation. And when I reinstall, I like to make sure that I back the anti-reverse drag off so that I don't have to worry about meshing teeth as I go to put the main gear back in. So here we go with that, a little bit of blue grease onto the shaft, replacing that old used grease. Put that back in, and once you put it back in, you can go ahead and turn the anti-reverse lever back in. And then we can go reinstall now. So on this one, you have 2 pivot points here. And actually, we should have done that first. I guess that would have been easier. Let's do it that way. As long as you have the advantage of having this out, the 2 pivot points line up with the 2 holes in the case here. And then the pivot on the smaller gear works into the shaft assembly. And then you just simply turn it to line up the pivot points of your gear with the holes in the side casing. Easier said than done sometimes. But if you line them up all in a row, it generally works best. And you have to play with it. Which is what I'm doing right now, just kind of playing with it.